Where approximately you parked your car?
I parked under well, down where the horse is on the corner, underneath the hydro pole. Slightly to the right of that is a tree beside the driveway, and I parked under that tree.
All right. Perhaps if Mr. Temponi could mark that as A.
So the horse's name was Doug, Mr. Wrigley, I understand.
Pardon?
The horse's name was Doug, I understand.
Yes, it was.
Did Doug come up to you, or did you go down to Doug?
Well, I drove down to there where I met Miss Barrett.
Right. But you didn't have to walk right down the paddock to see Doug?
No. As far as I went was virtually to where the picture is showing him now. There's an electric fence around, and that's where I've done all my work.
Yep.
Mr. Wrigley, there's a mark there you'll see. A, is that a fair representation of where you parked your car?
Very close.
Yeah. And you spoke with Miss Barrett there?
Yes.
Yes. And obviously you were discussing Doug and trimming his shoes, I gather.
Yeah, trimming his feet, yes.
His feet. And can you just explain to His Honour what you then did to carry out that work and where you did it?
Well, this was the first time I'd done the job. It was the first time I'd come to the property. So I introduced myself to Miss Barrett, and she went down and caught the horse, which is pretty much, it's exactly where that horse is standing in that photo, because that's where the gate and that's where she was feeding it. So that's where that horse stands all the time. That is where I actually performed the job.
Okay. How long did it take you?
Well, usually around about 20 minutes to do a job.
Okay. Was this the usual sort of job?
Yeah, it was just a basic trim.
Okay. And once you'd finished, what did you do next?
Well, once finishing there, I packed my gear up in the ute, and she had to go over to their house to get money, so I went over to there in the ute. I actually packed up and drove over to their house.
Okay. Near the car that's there in that photo?
To the other end of the house, really. I drove into the front of the house, virtually at the steps on the deck.
Right. Near the deck?
Yeah,
further towards the deck.
Where that red dot is now.
Okay, perhaps we just mark that with the letter B, Mr. Temponi. And you spoke with Miss Barrett again there, and she paid you, no doubt?
Yes. I actually sat in the car, and I was talking to Miss Barrett there for a few minutes. She paid me prior to me leaving. It was just pretty much a one-off job, being the first time I'd done it. So we was talking, she paid me, I left.
Okay. Now, when you left, can you just tell His Honour where you drove to leave the property?
I actually drove from where the letter B is now to the left-hand side of where the silver car is, yes, where the dot is. Follow the driveway round to the left and back out onto White Hills Road.
Okay. Mr. Wrigley, you might be able to see it. Tell me though if you can't. To the right of the driveway, almost in the centre of the picture, you might see what appears to be some pink lines.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Did you go anywhere in that area on the 3rd of January?
No. I drove in and drove straight over to the horse and then left via that same driveway that I come in.
Okay. Now, you're a smoker, Mr. Wrigley?
Yes, I am.
Yep. Did you smoke while you were at the property?
Yes, I would have.
And what did you do with your cigarette butts?
I'm very strict on myself with cigarette butts all the time. I put them out on my boot, or squeeze them out and put them in my pocket. If I'm in the car, I've always got a container in the car.
Okay. You were interviewed by Constable Lang shortly after this
Yes, I was.
3rd of January, and she asked you what you did with your cigarettes. What did you respond to her with?
Well, I explained to her what I do with them, and when she was actually there to see me, I'd only just got out of the shower, so I went straight back into the bathroom, grabbed my jeans that I'd worn that day, and removed a handful of cigarette butts out of my pocket.
And showed them to her?
Yeah, so that they're always in my pocket.
Just finally, Mr. Wrigley, your best estimate as to the time at which you left Melissa Barrett's property?
I really can't give a definite time on that from memory, but from memory, I'd say about a half an hour after the phone call. That sort of time is when I'd get to the place, because I already had an appointment, so I'd have rang her to say that I was on the way, but running slightly late, yes.
Okay, so just taking that through, so you think it was half an hour when you spoke to her?
Around about the 12 o'clock-ish, slightly after.
And then I think your evidence before was that it took about 20 minutes to do the job?
Yep, about 20 minutes, half an hour. I was on a virtually leave the property.
By my calculation, that means about 12:30, somewhere in that area.
Yes.
Agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Nothing further, Your Honour.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Reid.
No questions, thank you, Ron.
What sort of vehicle, Mr. Wrigley, is your vehicle, or was your vehicle?
My vehicle at that time would have been a dark blue Isuzu twin cab ute.
Right. And what sort of clearance has that got off the ground? Is it a sort of a high up?
It's a four-wheel drive, yes.
Four-wheel drive?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cox.
Sorry, I just omitted to tender that screenshot.
Yes, thank you.
Please tender that, but nothing otherwise.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. Wrigley, for taking the time out. You're free to go, or you're free to stay if you want to, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honour, could I now please recall Dr. Marston Smedley?
Yes, thank you. Just remind Dr. Marston Smedley, please, of his oath. Yes.
Just a reminder that your notice was previously sworn in. Did
Yes.
you understand?
I understand.
Yes, I'm not sure if that's helpful, the hearing loop, Doctor, but we'll give it a whirl.
It is a massive help.
Oh, great, thank you.
You can take a seat, Doctor. Now, Doctor, you recall yesterday afternoon I asked you to identify the various reports that you had prepared either for the 2013-14 Bushfire inquiry or for the purposes of this proceeding. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now, there's just two matters that I'd like to ask you some further questions about. You'll recall that in a couple of your reports for the purposes of this proceeding, you've commented on the possibility that the Fawcett bushfire was ignited by a burning root emanating from the tree stump that was described in the Tasmanian Fire Service fire investigation reports. Do you recall addressing that in at least a couple of your reports?
Yes.
Now, please keep in mind, Dr. Marston Smedley, that the TFS investigation identified a potential point of origin for the fire located at the point of what appeared to the fire investigators to be a burning root a couple of metres to the northeast of the tree stump.
Yes.
Now, keeping that in mind, could I now raise for you a second possibility? That is, His Honour has heard evidence from one of the first volunteer firefighters to attend at 242 Whitehills Road on the 3rd of January 2013, that firefighter observed a section of burning root, I'll withdraw that, it observed a section of root that was visible through a hole in the ground that was about 500 millimetres long, about 20 millimetres wide. It was on the north side of the tree stump and up against the tree stump. And the firefighter observed that that root was, as I said, still burning, in the sense that he could see that it was smoking. It had the appearance of white hot material, fibre, in the tree stump, and it glowed when the wind blew across it. Now, could I ask you this, Dr. Marston-Smedley, based on your examination of the scene after the event and your experience dealing with various types of eucalypts and the possibilities of underground roots burning, could you please tell His Honour your opinion as to whether it was plausible that there might have been more than one root emanating from this tree stump and burning near to the surface within a couple of metres in any given direction from the tree stump?
Entirely plausible, and once the tree stump had been ignited, the roots are highly likely to have then been ignited, and a tree root of that type of description would have been burning for a considerable period of time in order to have that appearance.
And when you say considerable period of time, Dr. Marston-Smedley, could you express that in minutes or hours or days or longer?
A 20 centimetre diameter root, I would anticipate, would take in the order of a minimum, absolute minimum of half an hour, and quite probably an hour or two.
Thank you. Now, you've referred, Dr. Marston-Smedley, to the stump as opposed to the roots. You've seen many photographs of the stump that were taken by various investigators after the fire, and you'll recall that there are some pieces of wood that protrude above the ground, but then separately in your reports you've referred to the root system to the stump. Could I just trouble you to describe for His Honour what your assessment is as to the overall structure of the wooden object that might be referred to compendiously as the stump? And could you do so, please, by reference to the visible parts of the wood, what might have been underneath the soil within the visible parts of wood, and by reference to what you've referred to as the root system?
The stump was described as a spiky object, and you can see that it's got parts of it well above ground level. Now, in my opinion, it is almost certain that that part of the stump would still have been attached to the root, otherwise it would have collapsed.
Yes, you mentioned this in one of your reports. You mentioned this in one of your reports where you say it's an old growth tree, and
that's right,
describe the dimensions of the root structure and so on.
And so it would have still been attached to wood that was in the base of the stump, in the hollow, which would then have been still attached to a root system from the previous tree.
Thank you, Dr. Marston-Smedley. Now, the last topic I wanted to address with you is the fire behaviour modelling that's addressed in your 4th and 5th reports in particular, although
yes,
also in the earlier ones. Now, firstly, the modelling that you set out there is modelling of the behaviour of a fire front. That's primarily, is that correct?
That's right.
And does your modelling enable you to make any, and if so, what assessments as to the possibility that there might be spotting fires thrown ahead of a fire front?
A fire of that nature...
Your Honour, I object to this. This is absolutely new material. Spotting has not been dealt with any explanation in Dr. Marston-Smedley's reports.
No, but it's certainly dealt with in his report for the Tasmanian Government in general terms.
It is, yes.
I don't think it's a question that's objectionable. Mr. Armstrong?
Thank you, Your Honour. Do you need the question again, Doctor?
My understanding of the question is what is the likelihood that the fire front would have been generating spot fires ahead of itself?
Yes.
And that is almost certain. Now, those spot fires would have been of various distances. Most of them would have been fairly short range, but under the conditions that were prevailing on that afternoon, some would have been at further distances. Now, under those conditions, I would anticipate that there would have been a very large number of spot fires out to the 100 to 200 metres distance from the fire front, and then a few out to the 1 or 2 kilometres. However, the overwhelming majority of those spot fires, if not all of them, would have been overrun by the fire front before they had time to be entirely built up into their own fires.
Well, I think you say in your report that to the Tasmanian government that certainly spotting to about 1.5 kilometres is possible. You think perhaps even a bit further than that at the worst of it?
Some out to possibly a little bit further, but the overwhelming majority within that up to 1.5 kilometres distance.
And while the fire commenced to run at about 6 to 8 metres a minute, I think it peaked, didn't it, at something like 80 metres a minute?
I would have to go back to my report where it's detailed in the last section. I thought it was about 35, but I'm only going on
Well, it varied, didn't it, from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to later in the evening, and then died off during the night to about 2 metres.
It is detailed in my report.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which report are you referring to there?
I'm referring to the that report which you brought up yesterday,
Thank you.
which is the one produced for the
Government
reviewing of the fires.
Thank you. Now, could I just elaborate on one aspect of His Honour's questions? Could I ask you, you've visited the scene at 242 Whitehills Road and also across to Inala Road, haven't you?
Yes, that's correct.
And could I ask you to now confine your answer to about the first hour and a half after the fire commenced, and please assume for this purpose that the fire commenced at about the location of the tree stump at 242 Whitehills Road. In the course of that first hour and a half, could you describe to His Honour what your expectation would have been as to the spotting behaviour ahead of the fire front?
What I would anticipate is that the fire would have steadily built up from its point ignition, and as the fire started to develop a fire front and the width of that fire front expanded, there would have been a significant increase in the rate of spread and the intensity, and at the same time a corresponding increase in the spotting potential. So that means that in the first 0 to say 15 minutes, the fire front would have been burning a lot slower with a smaller head, but after that time there would have been a very rapid escalation, and the spotting would have increased by a large proportion, probably 10 times or more.
And given what you know of the wind conditions on the day, could you please describe to His Honour what kind of spotting activity in terms of distance of spot fires you would have expected by about 45 minutes to an hour after the fire had started?
By about 2:45 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would be anticipating that there would certainly have been 1.5 kilometre spotting, with these fires then taking their own period of time to build up, and so almost certainly being then overrun by the fire front as it expanded.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honour. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Mr. Reed.
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. Could the witness please be shown document 116? We scroll down that so that Dr. Marsden's medley can become familiar with it. The next page, and The citation for that is Marston Smedley JB and Sheriff LJ 2014. It's effectively your document.
I was the primary author and
Yep.
wrote most of that document, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to take you to page number 0648. I put the wrong number on my document. Can we keep scrolling down, please? This is it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, Doctor, what was the purpose of this publication?
The purpose of this publication was to empower and train private landholders in the use of fire, in particular farmers, on their properties.
Right. And can I then take it that the purpose of Chapter 4 after the burn was to educate persons who are doing burns as to what they should do after the burn?
That is correct.
Right. Now, there's landholders are strongly encouraged to monitor and view both immediate and long-term outcomes from burning on their properties. Monitoring post-burn is also critical to prevent fire escapes, which can still be a risk after the burn. That was your opinion, and that's a well-known phenomenon.
That's correct.
Yes. Now, then you've said, then it follows then, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, please, what action you say ought to be taken in response to that risk.
Yes.
And that which follows, right down to the bottom, monitor closely for smoke, all of that is your view as to the appropriate action to be taken by landholders in response to the risk of a fire escape after a burn.
For the period immediately after the burn, that's correct.
Right. Is there anything else in the document for a longer period?
It certainly says at the top, monitoring in the longer term, in the first paragraph.
Yes.
I would have to review the document I haven't looked at this document for quite a few years, so I would have to review it.
Yes. Well, Doctor, I don't want to be unfair to you. It certainly does say long-term outcomes, but the suggestions I'm putting to you, your view of the suggestions were restricted to what appears on this page. We could perhaps continue to scroll down the pages after the burn so Dr. Marston Smedley can check to see if there's anything else relevant. Dr. Marston Smedley, the operator's sitting over there, Mr. Tempone. If you direct him as to the speed of the scrolling, I think that would be useful.
That paragraph certainly refers to the immediate period after the fire, and certainly when we did our training of farmers in the field, we emphasised the fact that proper monitoring post-burn is essential.
Yes. Yes. If you can just pay attention to the document, I'm asking you, please, to tell us if there's anything else in the document relating to long-term measures.
I would have to go through the document in myself, and to confirm that, I'm not sure.
Does it assist, though, if we scroll down the document for you now, or do you need some time to do that?
I would presume that you're saying that I have not mentioned longer-term monitoring is in the document, is what I suspect.
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking you a very open question. I'm inquiring as to whether you can help the court whether there's anything about long-term strategies in the document.
I would have to review the whole document myself to confirm that. It's several years since that document was produced.
Well, I'm asking you to review it, and I'm asking you, are you happy to review it as it's scrolled for you?
Yes.
Or do you wish to come out of the witness box and read the hard copy?
Either is okay by me.
Well, let's scroll through and deal with it, please.
Down. Down. Certainly in that paragraph it says that the stump, it says that stumps are high risk of escapes and should be checked over several weeks.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
I suspect that if my understanding of your question is correct, that paragraph at the bottom of the current page addresses your question.
Right. Do you want to go to the next page just in case there's something on there? Well, that's the end of the... It moves on. Yes, thank you. So that addresses the question. Thank you very much, Dr. Mosen-Smedley. Now, if the witness could be shown document 114. This is a document authored by yourself in September 2009.
That's correct.
I want to take you to page 0739, Bates number. It's page 42 of the document. Now, you'll see, if we scroll down, please, to 3.13.3, and it's the first paragraph that I want to draw your attention to, Dr. Mosen-Smedley, and ask if you can explain it. It may be that you're quite content that it's fully explained in its terms, but do you have anything to add to it, I suppose?
This goes to the point I was making a few minutes ago, how the fire, when it starts from a point location, steadily builds up, and as the length of active fire front increases, the effective rate of spread and intensity also increase. That is the point of that paragraph.
And it's based upon, the fire, as you understand it, started as a grass fire and then became a forest fire.
That is my understanding, that it was grass. It was probably also some forest litter fuel around the stump as well.
Yes.
But it would have started from a point location and then steadily built up.
Now, it then turned into a forest fire. You accept that?
Yes.
So what we're looking at is for fires to reach their quasi-steady state.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, what does that mean?
It means that the rate of fire spread over a period of time is essentially constant. You will get minor flare-ups and minor increases in rate of spread and then dying down, but over a period of time, it's effectively constant. And
this tells us that it will take a distance of up to about 300 to 450 metres for forest fires burning with high wind speeds to reach the quasi-steady state.
Under catastrophic conditions, yes, but when the conditions are less than catastrophic, i.e. a fire danger rating of less than 100, that distance will be shorter.
And what was the fire danger rating on the 3rd of January?
My understanding, I would have to check my report, but my understanding was it was around 50, but I'm not certain of that without checking my reports.
Right, so that will explain your opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong about this being your opinion, that it took about 230 metres before the fire that came from 242 White Hill Road reached its quasi-steady state.
I don't think I've made an estimate of the quasi-steady state of that fire. I made an estimate of where the fire was at 3 p.m, at which time it would have been approaching or at its quasi-steady state, but I don't believe I've actually made an estimate of that.
Yes, thank you for that. That's thank you. But it's your opinion that it was either approaching or at its quasi-steady state by 3 p.m.
Certainly when the fire line length exceeds about 100 metres in forest, it would be running at 90 to 95% of its quasi-steady state.
Could you please, Mr Tempono, go to Bates number 0741. This is on a different topic, Dr Marsden Smedley, as you'll notice when I take you to it, but I want to get your assistance. Yes, if we go to the previous page, first of all, you'll see that the heading is scorch height. So that's the topic that I'm wanting to come to. If we then move to the next page, yes, to the next page, please, thank you. And you'll see that there is a discussion in that first full paragraph in relation to scorch height compared to flame height. And you accept, Cliff, it's your document, you accept those figures?
Yes.
Now, if the witness could be shown document document 101, and if we can reduce those thumbnails and scroll down, please. We can just need to come up a little bit. Thank you. Document 17, please. What you see there is a TFS officer with a tape, and I'm not concerned about the exact distance here, Dr. Marsden Smedley. What I'm wanting is he's showing there the scorch height. You accept that that's showing the scorch height up to his hand?
No, that is not correct.
No. So what is that showing?
That is showing the char height.
Right.
Scorch height is on the canopy of the tree, not the trunk.
Oh, I see. Right. Thank you for that. Thank you. If document 123 can come up, please. Now, this is your report to the government.
That's right.
And I want to, will it help you if you use your hard copy, or would you prefer to stay on the screen?
I've got my hard copy here, so why don't you proceed and we'll see what works best.
Right, well, I'll have to use two numbers if you're going to be using your hard copy. That's all, Dr. Marsden Smedley. But can we go to page 533, which is page 5 of your report?
Ready.
Thank you. And you'll see in the centre of that page, you've referred to observed rates of fire spread were compared against predictions made by various measures.
That's right.
Now, where did the information of observed rates of fire spread come from?
They came from a number of sources, including mapped fire line lengths, where the fire service went out with a helicopter and actually flew around the fire to determine the fire location. They also came from line scans, which are an infrared scan of the fire performed by the Victorian Department of Sustainability and Environment. And in some cases, they came from observations of firefront locations made by people who were there.
Right. Leaving aside the third factor, what what is the earliest time that you had either a helicopter flyover or a Victorian created document?
1735 on the 3rd of January.
Right. Now, Dr. Marsden-Smedley, where is that document? Do you have it?
I have it as a computer-based map info map of the fire line that was supplied to me by the Fire Service, Tasmania Fire Service.
And does it appear in any of your papers?
It certainly appears in this report as a map, and it is included in the data files at the back of the report. Okay.
All right. Can you take me, please, to where it's shown in the hard copy?
That is shown in the section on the Fawcett fire. On must be in the appendix, and it is shown in map A4.1.2.
Could you hold that up and show me,
Oh, no,
please?
no.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Now, if you go down to my page 86, I'm not sure what that is on you. It's near the end of the report. No, further down. It's near the end. There are a whole series of maps. Right. On that one there, please. The bottom of that page.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Now, that map itself was given to you by the Fire Service.
That's correct.
Is that what your evidence is?
Yes.
And what do you say that map was created from?
It was created from a aerial mapping of the fire.
And do you have any knowledge as to how aerial mapping occurs?
The way it is normally done is the helicopter flies as close as possible to directly above the active fire front, and the operator has a GPS running, and the track log of the GPS is then downloaded and put onto the map.
So you got the map, but not the track log of the GPS. Is that right? Or did you get the track log of the GPS?
No, I got the map of the fire.
Right. Right. Well, thank you very much for that, Dr. Marsden-Smedley. Now, back, if we could, to page 533 of the document. And you'll see that you have come down, if I'm right, in favour of Project Vesta as providing the best predictions of head fire spread rate.
That is correct.
And that is because you got a correlation within 4% of the other material provided, those three other lots of material, by use of Project Vesta.
That's right. The model did remarkably well.
Yeah, thank you. Now, further down on that page, there's a reference to, well, I'll read it out. During each of the Fawcett, Dunalley, Repulse, Bicheno and Giblin River fires, higher intensity fires burnt into recently burnt areas. Now, the recently burnt area that you're referring to there for Fawcett, Dunalley was Madonna.
That's correct. It was a planned burn performed by Tom Dunbabin shortly before the fire occurred.
And what was the size of that burn, first of all, and secondly, what was the effect of it on the fire?
I do not have an actual boundary of that fire that was done on the Bangor property. My understanding is it was about 100 to 150 hectares, and the very, very high intensity fire that hit it on the 4th of January was not stopped by the planned burn, but it was radically reduced in intensity as it reburnt the planned burn. And I note that no properties were lost adjacent to that planned burn, but lots of properties were lost in Madonna, in areas that were not adjacent to the planned burn.
Thank you. What about repulse? Same questions, again, the size and the effect.
I don't remember repulse burning into a recently planned burnt area.
Right. Well, if you look at the report, it appears to indicate that that's so. Again, a high intensity fire burnt into recently burnt areas. But if you don't remember, Dr. Marsden-Smedley, we can move on.
Repulse certainly burnt into very poorly stocked plantations that have been established, my understanding, by the Guns Timber Company, which have been very poorly stocked, and that radically reduced its rate of spread and intensity and retarded its growth. But that's, without checking my records, and it is quite a few years ago now, that is the only one I can think of here and now for repulse.
Right. Bicheno?
The Parks and Wildlife Service had done a planned burn along the access road to Friendly Beaches on the northern side of the road, and that fire was highly effective at stopping the main Bicheno fire. The Bicheno fire burnt approximately 100 metres into that planned burn before it completely extinguished.
And Gibbon River?
The Parks and Wildlife Service had done a buttongrass moorland planned burn on Settlement Point at the Gunfight Creek site, which again the Giblin fire burned into as a very high intensity, very fast moving fire, and it burnt approximately 350 metres into the planned burn before extinguishing.
So the higher the intensity of the fire, the quicker the rate of burn. Is that fair or not?
Yes, that is reasonable.
Thank you. And what do you define then as a high intensity fire? One burning at how many kilometres an hour or metres a minute?
A high intensity fire, I would measure using its heat output along with its rate of spread, and I would anticipate that a high intensity fire would be burning at least 25 to 50 metres a minute with a heat output of at least 10,000 kilowatts per metre of fire line.
Right. Thank you. Now, at the lower end of the lower end of speed, so down towards, let's take 30 kilometres an hour, is the effect the same, the retarding effect the same or more dramatic or less?
Do you mean 30 metres a minute, not 30 kilometres an hour?
I do, yes.
For a low intensity fire, one burning at say 2 to 5 metres a minute, but again it does vary on the vegetation and fuel type. But
Sorry,
yes,
so 30 metres a minute I want to use.
okay.
Yep.
Well,
That begs
30.
the question of whether Dr. Marsden-Smedley accepts that that's a low intensity fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, well, I don't think he does. I think he puts that at the lower end of his high
2
intensity.
metres a minute.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
That's right.
That's right.
As per the run of spread on
Yeah.
the night of the 3rd.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. So, what if it runs into a recently burnt area at 30 metres a minute? Will the effect be as radical as the high intensity fire as you've described? More radical or less radical?
Much more. The planned burn will be much more effective at stopping the fire.
Thank you. And what then of open pasture land if the fire comes to that?
Depends entirely on the nature of the pasture. If the pasture is eaten out, it'll be quite effective at stopping it. If it's not eaten out and the grass is cured, it will be completely ineffective.
Thank you. Now, you revisited the question of the model in your report of the 6th of March 2020, and I just want to take you to document 12 at 0040. And at the bottom of that page, at 1432, you confirm that you've used equation 10 in the project Vesta model for your calculations.
That's correct.
Thank you. And if we can go to page 110 of that report. At the bottom of that page, A431, you've said the utility of fire behaviour models has markedly improved due to a number of factors, and it's that improvement, is it, that's given you, or gave you rather, in 2013. So I'll start that question again. Is this a reference, utility of fire behaviour models improvement after 13, or it was the improvement that really led you to the remarkable coincidence, I shouldn't say remarkable, the close coincidence between the model and the information you've been supplied?
It is due to a combination of factors. Yes, the Project Vesta fire behaviour model, which came out in 2012, was a major improvement in forest fire behaviour prediction, but also the Bureau of Meteorology's weather forecasts have radically improved over the years, and we've also got a much better handle following 2010 with the development of a highly robust fuel hazard prediction system as well. So it's a number of factors.
Thank you. Could we go to document 123, Bates 0542? It's page 14 in your report, Dr. Marsden-Smedley. Document 123, did I say, Mr. Tempone? Yes. 054. Thank you. Now, you'll see that you've written in the 5th line on that page, by about 3 o'clock, the fire had grown to a size and intensity where, under prevailing weather, site and access conditions, effective suppression would not have been feasible given available resources. And you've said at 3 o'clock, the C. Haynes index would have been 10.5, the mean wind speed be 40 kilometres, gusting to 55, relative humidity of 14%, the forest fire danger rating of about 47. So that final figure is the one that would need, that you referred to earlier when you were looking at 100. Am I right there or not?
Well, I think that's the one Dr. Marsden-Smedley thought might have been about 50.
Yes, that's
what I thought.
Yes, that's so 47.
Is about 50, yes.
Yes, your memory was pretty good. Yes, thank you. What's the C. Haynes index?
The C. Haynes index is a measure of atmospheric stability, and atmospheric stability is really fundamental in the development of high intensity fires, and it's basically a measure that the whole atmosphere will effectively turn over and bring high wind speed, dry air from high altitudes down to the ground surface and effectively supercharge the fire. So what happens is that you get a convection column forming, very rapid uplift in the convection column, and then air comes down from aloft to replace that air, and that air has high wind speeds and low humidities, which then makes a rapid increase in the rate of fire spread and intensity.
Right, so taking those matters into account, it's your opinion expressed below the maps that between about 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 3rd, the fire moved east with a rate of spread of about 30 metres a minute.
That's right.
Now, variations for reason of topography are taken into account in that rate of spread by Project Vesta. You may not be expressing that as well as you'd like it to, so please re-express it.
When predictions are made of fire behaviour, site slope is initially important when the fire is building up, but once the fire is fully running, the increase in rate of spread you get as it goes up a hill will be offset as it goes down the next hill. And so you can then ignore the slope. So then the critical factors become things like wind speed, fuel moisture, predicted from the temperature and humidity, and the level of fuel hazard.
I think what Mr. Reid's asking you, though, is whether that includes atmospheric condition.
It does not include explicitly the atmospheric stability. That needs to be added in qualitatively because we don't yet have a quantitative model of incorporating it.
And you have incorporated it qualitatively.
This report is a descriptive report in this phase of the report, not a predictive.
Yes, thank you. Now, I hope that my next question is understandable. You were well aware of the topography, rate of growth, understory, etc., throughout all of this area of the initial fire run, aren't you?
I had actually performed fire assessments along the northern, what became the northern flank of the fire in 2006, before the fire occurred, when I was actually investigating that area for performing fire research. And then post-fire, I did a whole lot of measurements where I attempted to rebuild what would have been the conditions at the time of the fire. So yes.
So in the forested areas,
Yes.
stretching from Fawcett through to Mother Brown's Bonnet,
Yes.
there is no, within the forested areas of that stretch, there's no significant change in conditions.
By my calculation, the level of fuel hazard would have averaged between very high and extreme. Some of the gullies would have been more towards extreme, some of the drier slopes very high, but not a huge variation across that area.
Right. Thank you. So, thank you. Now, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you tell us it would have had a spread rate of 43 metres a minute.
Could you scroll down, please, Mr. Tampana? Yep, thank you.
What accounts for that increase? We've got a doubling of the predicted intensity. Is that it, or are there other factors?
My calculation would have been at that time it would have been fully coupled with the atmosphere, and that would have been the effect of the instability coming in, resulting in the effective wind speed being fully being felt by the fire.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you mentioned the influence of slope on the fire, and you have some detail in your reports about the effect of upslope on a fire. In the early stages, before the quasi-steady rate is reached, what is the effect of downslope on the speed of a fire, if anything?
It's very similar in that the rate of fire spread doubles for every 10 degrees upslope and halves for every 10 degrees downslope, which means that if you get a fire burning at, say, 20 metres a minute on flat ground, if it moved onto a 10 degree upslope, that rate of spread would increase to about 40 metres a minute. But if it went on a 10 degree downslope, it would decrease from 20 to 10 metres a minute.
Thank you. Can we go to 0576, which is page 48 of your report, Dr. Marsden-Smedley? And all I want to do is to draw your attention, Dr. Marsden-Smedley, to table 5, areas and perimeters. it was your opinion at the time of writing this report that by 3 o'clock the area of the fire which had come from 242 White Hills Road was 2.5 hectares.
Yes,
And its perimeter was 0.7. What does perimeter mean in this context?
it is the total boundary of the fire in kilometres.
So we run a line from the back of the fire to round the flanks to the front of the fire, round the flank, round one flank to the front of the fire, back and then back to the back of the fire.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Now, at 0578, you have another table. It's headed up observed weather, and the fire behaviour that you refer to is a rate of spread, ROS, rate of spread, of 35.6 metres a minute.
That's right.
Now, is that the average of those two figures I took you to at 0542 on page 14 of your report?
I believe that's correct because that is the average for the rate of spread between 1500 and 1740.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, thank you. Now, could we please go to document 30. I don't think that's it. I'm sorry, I've written the wrong document number down again. Dr. Marsden-Smedley's report of March 2020. 12. Oh, I see what I've done. Yes. And to 0060, please. Now, you've revisited these figures at 3.2.3.4, but you haven't changed them, Dr. Marsden-Smedley. You've stayed with the same formulation. That's so?
That's my memory, yes.
Well, would you like to check it? I don't want to be...
Yes.
Thank you. And you've put a